So if we're talking about matter, atoms, elements, molecules, what is glucose? Is that an example of an atom, an element, or a molecule? I've got some answers coming into the chat. Everybody think about it. Is glucose an atom, an element, or a molecule? Yeah, so a lot of people are telling me that glucose is a molecule, and you're absolutely right. Now, some people are telling me that glucose is energy, and you're close, but glucose itself is not energy. It's a thing that we can get energy from, and it's where we get our energy from by breaking it down. But glucose is a molecule, and it's a type of matter, so that's different from energy. Energy is something that flows, it transforms between different sources. It ultimately comes from the sun, but matter is this stuff. Like my pen is made up of atoms and molecules, and that's matter. So glucose is a form of molecule. It has 3 different elements. What are the elements that make up glucose? Tell me in the chat, tell me out loud. What elements make up glucose? Right, so I have carbon. C stands for carbon, and that's an element. Hydrogen, yep, and oxygen. And how do I know those are elements? Well, let's take a trip. Because I'm enough of a nerd that I got a periodic table in my personal mail, and so I hung it up in my classroom. And so elements are any of these things on the periodic table. And you can see that the first one is hydrogen. That's an element. Carbon here is an element. So is oxygen. Anything on this table is an element. It's a type of atom. So I represented those in my Lego version as 3 different colors of Legos. Green for carbon, red for oxygen, and yellow for hydrogen. So I said that like a Lego itself is an atom, but a color of Lego, a type of Lego, is an element. And I showed that like I could find those types on my periodic table. So if I wanted to like complete this analogy, I would need like 140 colors of Legos because there's a ton of different elements. So this is what an organic chemist would think of when they think of glucose. This is the structure. Now in this structure, what do the black spheres represent? What are my black spheres?
Carbon.
Carbon, yeah, absolutely. So my chemical formula tells me I have 6 carbons in the structure. So these 6 black spheres are my carbon atoms. So carbon's an element, but these pieces are atoms. Now, if I'm cool, I show those as green Legos. So then oxygen, I have 6 of those, and what color did they use to represent oxygen, the chemists? Red. So I could show oxygen as being red Legos, and I could show hydrogen as being yellow Legos. And if I snap them together, that's my analogy for forming bonds. And then I have a glucose molecule, which is all of those atoms connected. So the type of atom is the element. The Lego or the piece itself is the atom. And I snap them all together or bond them all together to make a molecule. So what other molecules do you know? Just type them in the chat. Everybody, what is another example of a molecule? It could be a molecule in photosynthesis. It could just be a random molecule you know. But let's practice thinking about molecules by just listing some. A water molecule, absolutely. H2O, it's got 3 atoms of 2 different types, hydrogen and oxygen, but it's a molecule. Sodium bicarbonate, nice. So sodium bicarbonate, it would be NaCO3, Na2CO3. So that would be made up of sodium atoms, carbon atoms, and oxygen atoms. And that would be an example of a molecule altogether. Carbon dioxide, yeah, so here's carbon dioxide, the chemistry version. But if you want to be more fun, then you think about Legos, and you put a green Lego for the carbon and 2 red Legos for the oxygens, snap them together, make some bonds, and that's carbon dioxide. Ooh, I have a good one. Okay, I've got 2 good ones. Okay, so Aaron said salt, and you're absolutely right. Does anybody know what the chemical formula for salt is? Or what elements are there in salt, table salt? Anybody know? Nice, Anna, NaCl. So Na is sodium and Cl is chloride. Yep, or chlorine, sorry. So sodium chloride is table salt. It's made up of sodium and chlorine. I've got another great one. Somebody said nitrogen. Nitrogen's a really good one because if we take a trip back over to the periodic table, we can see that there is nitrogen here right between carbon and oxygen. That big N is a nitrogen. So nitrogen, it's an element, but it's also a molecule if you have 2 atoms of nitrogen bonded together. So nitrogen gas, N2, is actually what makes up most of our atmosphere. So nitrogen gas is a molecule. Nitrogen itself is an element. So another one like that is what gas that's really important to us, where we need 2 atoms to make a molecule. Anybody know what I'm talking about? It's in the photosynthesis equation.
Oxygen.
Oxygen. So oxygen, if like you're never going to breathe in a single oxygen atom, you're going to breathe in O2. O2 is oxygen gas. So oxygen doesn't like to travel alone. You're never going to find just one. So it's always going to be O2. And we can see that in our photosynthesis equation, which was here, right? So we have water molecules, we have carbon dioxide molecules, we have glucose molecule, and we've got oxygen gas molecules, and it's O2. Now, it's a good note down here. You can see the subscript or the number after the letter, the big letter, that says how many atoms there are in a molecule of oxygen gas. So in the molecule, there's 2. But this number in front of the molecule is called a coefficient. You don't need to know that. But that number says how many of the oxygen gas molecules do we have in this equation. So altogether, how many oxygen atoms are there? 12, yeah. So it's kind of like saying I have like, you know, pairs of shoes, but I have 6 pairs. So I've actually got 12 shoes. So that's a little bit more on that. So hopefully this, what's on this slide with our glucose molecule and the atoms and the different types of atoms being elements, hopefully that starts to make some sense. Because really our goal with learning this is just that when we talk about photosynthesis, we can say, oh, hey, like this molecule of carbon dioxide is being used, but the atom carbon might end up in a different molecule. And so we kind of just need to have that vocabulary. All right. Now, what questions do we have about that? What questions do we have about atoms, elements, molecules, Legos, marshmallows? All right, if there aren't any questions, I want you to look at this. So yesterday, we did a little demo, and it involved me lighting things on fire. Now, why did we do that demo? Because I like lighting things on fire. No, I've got educational things to say, I promise. So what we did is now I'm showing you the reaction that was involved in what we did. So does anybody remember what was the gas that we used? What was the gas that came out of this little fixture in my lab? Anybody remember what that gas was? Ooh, I just got a notification. It was really loud. I'm trying to see the chat, but I am having trouble viewing it right now. Here we go. Yeah, it was methane. So CH4 is methane. And what do we know about methane? Where does it come from? Yep, it comes from the rear end of cows. It comes from industrial processes. It's a nasty gas, and it's a big problem when we think about greenhouse gases involved in climate change. So methane is this gas CH4. So I've got carbon atom and I've got 4 hydrogen atoms, and they're bonded together. Now, what gas do we know is probably in my room? We know it's in there because I'm alive and I'm breathing. What gas would that be? I heard pieces of it. Yeah, oxygen. So oxygen is this gas that's in my room. Now, if I turn on the gas, all right, I'm going to put this tube that's connected to my methane gas in the beaker. And then I'm going to turn the gas on. I'm making some bubbles. All right, so I'm going to let it fill up. I've got these bubbles that are filled with methane gas. I'm going to turn that off. Now I'm gonna rinse my pull up my sleeve. I'm gonna rinse my hand under a bunch of water, get it totally wet. That's important. Get some more bubbles, bubbles, bubbles. Okay, so then I'm gonna scoop these up in my hand. Now I got this nice lighter. What? So let's do it again. I like bubbles. So I'm taking these methane bubbles. Okay, that's enough bubbles. I'm taking these bubbles that are filled with methane, and I'm applying energy. I light it on fire. And I light it up. Question 1 is, why is my hand not burnt? Anybody have a guess for why my hand is not burnt? The water. Yes, Nora. What about the water? What could you guess is like maybe a property of water that let me light my hand on fire and not be burnt? Even if you don't know what the property is called, what do you think is happening? So Dylan's saying it puts out the fire. Has anybody ever heard that rule where like if you don't know what kind of fire it is, probably like don't pour water on it? Because sometimes water can put out a fire. Sometimes water can make a fire worse. Ooh, I like the word Isaac used, shielded. So the water shielded my hand. And a word that I would use is the water insulated my hand. So some chemicals, and water is a chemical, it's a type of molecule. Some chemicals, they don't like to change temperature. They're kind of like, if you've ever been called stubborn, you don't like change. Water's like you. So water doesn't want to change temperature. And who cooks pasta? Raise your hand if you've like made pasta before. Yeah. So you guys have made pasta. Does the water, when you put the pan on the stove full of water, does it immediately go to a boil? No, right? That's why I don't make pasta, because I have to wait like 8 minutes. But so the water takes a long time, and there's like all kinds of sayings about like, you know, if you watch water or something, it won't boil. I don't know. But the idea is that water doesn't want to change. And so if I coat my hand in water, it's going to take a ton of energy to make that water change temperature. And so my hand doesn't really feel much. It felt a little bit warm. And as long as I tie my hair back, lab safety, I'm good. I'm safe. So let's think about this reaction. So we took methane gas.
B lunch students are now dismissed for lunch.
Yay, lunch for B students. Okay, so I took this gas methane and I burned it with oxygen. And in case you are interested, when I burn something in the presence of oxygen, that's called a combustion reaction. Now, what I want you to think about is did I lose any atoms when I burnt this gas? If I look at the left and then I look at the right and I count the number of each type of atom. So I'm going to count, there's 1 carbon on the left and 1 carbon on the right. How many oxygens do I have on the left? How many oxygens are there in 2 molecules of O2? It's not 2 because I've got 2 atoms in 2 molecules. So I've actually got 4. Yep, nice job. So how many oxygens do I have on the right? Yeah, 4. So I've got 2 molecules of water that each have 1. So there's 2 there. And I've got 1 molecule of carbon dioxide that has 2 atoms of oxygen. So I've got 4 oxygens over here and 4 oxygens over here. And the same is true for hydrogen. So I didn't lose any matter. Did I lose any energy? No. What was my original energy source? Where did I get the energy to do the reaction? This thing, right? So I got the energy from here. It was heat energy. And now I've transformed the energy, but I didn't lose any energy. And so the big idea here, I mean, honestly, we did this because lighting things on fire is fun. But we can learn that, number one, atoms are like extroverts. I'm not saying they're like people, but they're like extroverts. They like being with other atoms. So it takes energy to break them apart. So I broke apart my methane, and the carbon ended up in a CO2 molecule, carbon dioxide gas, and the hydrogen ended up in water molecules, but nothing was lost. I just rearranged. And that's really what photosynthesis is it's us rearranging molecules by breaking some apart and putting them back together. And if we look at what glucose is, it's got carbons that at one point in time were parts of carbon dioxide molecules. So if none of that made sense, just think about this. In the back, my office is like right back there. I have a lunchbox. It has an apple. It's got other stuff too, don't worry. But it's got an apple. And that apple has sugars. And all of the sugars have carbon in them. But it is very possible that the carbons in my apple were the same carbons that you breathed out. Because if my plant is taking in carbon dioxide through this process of photosynthesis, which we looked at up here, if my plant needs carbon dioxide that has carbon and it turns that into a sugar, and that sugar might end up stored in this fruit, then the sugar in my apple could have carbon that you breathed out at some point in time. So that's kind of where we're going with thinking about matter. Is like, how are these atoms ending up in multiple places? How are they being reused? So what we're going to do, and I'm going to see how much time we've got here, is we still have like 15-ish to 20-ish minutes. And what I want to do with that time is show you what you're going to be working on tomorrow. I also want to show you what resources you have if you get stuck. So you are going to click in the calendar on Photosynthesis Exploration Part 1. So this is a lab that's kind of similar to a Google assignment, and that it's embedded in Canvas. So you're going to do it right here in the Canvas assignment. And you're going to have to, when you get to this assignment, sign up for Pivot. There's already a class there that you'll be in, but you're going to sign up for Pivot. There'll be a button to do that. You'll use your normal email information. And then you're going to get to a place that looks like this. So Pivot is this really cool lab software. And basically what you're going to do is you are going to collect data from a video of an experimental setup. So this is what it's going to look like when you get here. And the big question that you guys are exploring here is, how do the gas levels, gases being carbon dioxide and oxygen, change when plants are exposed to light and when they're in the darkness? So what I'm going to do is right now, I'm going to give you a brief overview of like, what are you doing? I'm going to show it to you, but I'm going to go kind of fast. And so what I want you to know is that when you start to do this lab, you have some resources available. And those resources are videos linked right here, video 1 and video 2. So I spent my free time making 2 YouTube videos where I do the whole lab. I'm recording myself doing the lab, and it looks like this. You see the screen, you see me down in the right corner, and I literally walk through it step by step. So if we get to the end of class today and you're like, I don't have a clue how to start, then I just recommend that you click right here on the first video and have me up on one tab and have your lab up on the other tab, and like get a sense for what you're doing, do that part. Play a little more of the video, do that part. And I can be like your lab partner in that way. Otherwise, if you're like, dude, I don't need you, then don't ever open the video and just go do the lab. And if you run into an issue, you could pull up the video that you need. Or you could watch the video the whole way through and then do the lab, but it's really up to you. So there's one video of me recording my data, and then there's one video where I'm recording my process as I go through the analysis questions. There's not a lot, but I'm there to help you. So those, keep in mind that that's a resource and you can use it however you want. But what I'm going to show you now is the preview of this lab. So I'm checking the chat, so if there's any questions, I can keep an eye on that. But here's basically what you're doing. So you can see here, let me just tell you about the setup. There's this tank. This is a gas chamber, and it's really well sealed so that on this monitor, you can see exactly how much carbon dioxide and how much oxygen is in there. So this is like a monitor. Now, if you click in the upper right-hand corner on this tool symbol, you can select the stopwatch, and you can drag that up here so that you have a stopwatch, a way to keep time. Now, what's going to happen is that when you play the video, they're going to put a plant in the chamber. This is a basil plant, in case you care. And they're going to put that in the chamber, and they're going to seal the chamber shut. And then a sped up part of the video will start. You know it started when you see this time-lapse thing pop up. So back here, you didn't have it, but at about this point, it starts. So all these instructions are written down here when you see number 1. Here's the instructions that I'm telling you right now. But once you get to the time-lapse part, you advance the video to that point, you pause, and you're gonna reset your stopwatch by clicking on this little back button. So I set it to 0 minutes, and this is where my experiment starts, okay? So all my data I'm gonna get through this video. And what I'm going to be looking at is this monitor that shows me on top the concentration of carbon dioxide and on bottom the concentration of oxygen. Now, oxygen's measured here in percentages, but what do you see about CO2? Is it measured in percent, or what is it measured in? What's the unit? Yeah, it says ppm, but what does that even mean? What does ppm stand for? Has anybody ever looked at, like, sometimes you see ppm when people are talking about like climate change data and they're like, whoa, the amount of oxygen in the world is going up so fast. ppm stands for, I'm going to type it in the chat, everybody, parts per million, which literally means if I have 1 million gas molecules, how many of them are carbon dioxide? So that's our unit there. But what you're going to do is, I made you a data table. You're welcome. My gift to you. I just made this, and so it's already there. And what you do is, for each time interval, we're counting up by 10-minute time intervals, you're going to record, is it light or is it dark? It'll be obvious. what's the carbon dioxide concentration in ppm, and what's the oxygen concentration in percent. So you'll notice it wants us to take a data point at 0 minutes. So as soon as I reset my stopwatch, I'm going to record what's the carbon dioxide concentration. I look here at this iPhone thing, and it says 730 ppm. So I write that down. And then I got to find oxygen, and here it says on the bottom 19.62%. So I write that down. And then as soon as I have my initial data, I can advance the video until my stopwatch shows 10%, or 10%, 10 minutes. Now, does it need to be perfect? No. You just get it kind of close. Science is not perfect. So at 10.1 minutes, I now have a carbon dioxide concentration of 634 and an oxygen concentration of 19.66. Now you might be noticing that it looks like the carbon dioxide changed a whole lot more than the oxygen did. But notice that we're in different units. So we're not looking at the same unit, so we can't quite make a direct comparison. So now, is it still light? Yep, the lights are still on. So I'll just type light in this box so I keep track of that. And then I would advance the video again until I get to 20 minutes, a little bit more. And I'd take my next data point, 556 and 19.68. So whether you use my video or you just try it on your own, you're taking your own data. You're doing the lab yourself, but you've got a ton of help in my videos. So the last thing I want to mention is that you're going to look at a graph eventually in order to analyze your data. And I already made your graph too. So as soon as you put data in, notice that my 3 data points, they're already in here. So all you have to do is collect the data in the table and the graph is going to make itself. But you're going to want to look at both oxygen and carbon dioxide changing over time. So notice that you can click on the left here on the axis title to change which gas you look at. So now I'm looking at oxygen level versus time, and oxygen goes up. But I look at carbon dioxide, and that goes down. So notice that you can change that. And then when you finish, you'll have a couple analysis questions. And if you get to that part and you're like, I don't know how to make any sense of this, then you just click on the data analysis video and we'll walk through it together.